to the LAUders, featuring poet Maria Ferguson, and also to the last event of this year's 2021 Leeds Poetry Festival. Woo! Thank you so much for being here, really, heartfelt. I'm Karen Green. I wrote the BA in Creative Writing at Leeds Arts University, where some of our fantastic performers come from tonight. Along with Maria, we also have poet Caitlin Stobie on stage with us tonight too. And I'd like to thank Maria, Caitlin and Poppy, festival organiser, for all their support and encouragement. For some of the student writers here tonight, it's their first time in front of a live audience, but I can guarantee it won't be their last. So without further ado, let me introduce the first of our performers. Our first performer was diagnosed as a poet from a young age. It's been a tough year, but I'm pleased to announce they no longer exclusively speak in rhyme. Introducing Alex Callahan.
Hi. Oh gosh, that's loud. Hi, I'm Alex. My first poem is called Toad in a Top Hat. I have been assailed by a toad in a top hat. From first I saw them astride on my lawn, their eyes scowl sinister, dictating in miniature that no more shall mow on the grass I am on. Now, I've been polite, but they've sat there from spite, as if time stopped, although it is linear, so I'm stuck in my flat, as they sit in their hat, a gentleman toad all oblivious. The Great World Turtle, a flat earth conspiracy. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then it exploded, which it wasn't supposed to do. There was an inquest for those responsible when found or brought to justice. It seems a common occurrence. It was claimed by the devil, but he claims everything. After the beginning, there were things and there were people. People, after the dinosaurs, but no one ever seems to count them. I think the teeth put people off, but they're way more interesting than people have ever been. But then there were people, which there wasn't supposed to be. There was an inquest for those responsible when found or brought to justice. It seems a common occurrence. It was claimed by the devil, but he claims everything. And there were snapping turtles and hippopotami, bulbous balloons endowed with sentience and a lack of dental hygiene. And the turtles, they aren't very good at cars, they just snap, which is unfair and bad sportsmanship, but at least turtles are cool. But then there were turtles, which there wasn't supposed to be. There was an inquest for those responsible when found or brought to justice. It seems a common occurrence. I claimed the turtles. I found them quite amusing, a distraction from what else had been made. So I was made into a turtle, and I carry the flat earth upon my back as penance for my crime. My next poem, it's quite personal. I've put a lot of myself into it, so I'm quite nervous to share it. It's called Sun. Sun, sun, burns my bum, serves me right for streaking. This one's called Tea. Tea? Me, please, thanks. Left by the window, next to the plants. Tea by the laptop, work all half done, mug all half drunk, seems I moved on. But on my return, new mug in hand, fresh out the kettle to aid in my plans, a trail of mugs leads me back to my desk. Booby traps left by myself, all in jest. Full cups, waxing, waning crescents, novelty, colourful, some of them presents. Later, I think, as I sit down to work, but that's always the job that I tend to shirk. The mug army builds, the mugs, they are many, and down in the cupboard, the strong pool is empty. In the distance, the rattle of spoons. They are coming. I've got one more poem for you tonight. Thank you. Been a lovely audience. Also, I am selling pamphlets in the bookshop at the back. They have toads on the front with top hats on. There are 4 poems in there, 2 of which you will hear tonight. Buy them if you want. Don't have to. It's optional. My last poem is called A Great British Apology. I'm sorry for that time we invaded you. Yes, and that other time too. Was there another one? I'm sorry for our harsh rules, the empire, for slavery. I'm sorry for any past depravity, as well as all that business with the tea. I put it all on me in this apology. I'm sorry about our low intake of refugees, all those lost on the seas. I'm doing my best to appease. I'm sorry about climate change, any offences that range from breaching your defences to being discriminatory. I'm sorry about racism and sexism, not to mention any phobias of religion or sexuality. You be whoever you want to be. I put it all on me in this apology. I'm sorry for not laughing at your jokes, for coughing at times I spoke, for Brexit and any exit I made that was too abrupt. I'm sorry for your loss and that your boss is a man. I'm sorry for your workload and that I sometimes interrupt. I'm sorry for saying sorry and that time you bumped into me. I put it all on me in this apology. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. I think any reading that starts with toads and flat earth conspiracies is a win for me. Do check out the pamphlet at the back. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Anna Brizolara is a creative writing student at LAU and a copywriter, and this is her first ever time reading to an audience from a stage.
I am Anna Brizolara, and what I'm going to read to you tonight, I wrote recently. I'd like to share it especially for anyone who's in a relationship who's struggling with that gut feeling. R.I.P. English language, never been my favourite. Always been more of a English lit kind of girl. Not that you ever seem to notice. Not gonna lie, pretend to be clever, don't need to. But I didn't get it at first, but then why would I? Wasn't meant for me, was it? Pixels on a screen, letters swimming, blue, then green, and he kept repeating it. And she'd say it back. Sometimes I wonder which one of you came up with it, but then she calls me impressive, so. Just that week, he'd asked me to raise my hips. Yeah, like that. That was new. And then the penny dropped. Fucking hell. Now it all makes sense. Intimacy, reciprocated, love, whispered. Screams, maybe, if she's that way inclined, who knows? Oh yeah, you do. God, I hope you think she's worth it. I already know she's not. And here's something else that I've learned while deciphering your texted code. What you gave each other is an initialism, not an acronym. And an initialism is never seen as a whole. It's a shorter, lazier version of something potentially so beautiful and so much bigger. To value words, use them with care, and to trust in their meaning, you need patience and grace. So the words I say next, I've taken my time to choose. And as I say them, I'll hold my head high, exhume from the very bottom of my heart. Let our marriage rest in peace.
Thank you, Anna. That was really powerful. Our next poet is Beth Harrison, who writes poetic, floral, and introspective poetry and prose. She has an interest in exploring the relationship between tenderness and the grotesque.
Hello. You, cowering baby thing, fanatical fresh starter, tight lung chatterbox, with nothing to show for it, but a few stray whites, a generosity I've honed, and a suspicious disposition. Surrendered, solid-souled, 21st birthday gold. Souring up with alcohol hostilities and overly empathetic tendencies. But all the edges know that if you ran for it, I'd be right behind you. Grotesque, I know, but you can scrape these polyp globs of fat from beneath your eyelids. And I know your gynecologist said she couldn't see anything, but you find several on your cervix too, lingering. So I wouldn't trust her if I were you. You put them into a petri dish underneath a microscope. They shrink, dissolve, tessellate, become bigger again. And at your appointment yesterday, your gynecologist said you could trust her again. But here are the facts: protruding pink abnormalities intact. You repeat this fleshy cycle over, and over. Every inch of you linking, pinking, protruding again, daring to be purple. You're in a lab in a pristine white coat. Underneath you are protuberance still, magnified still, moving still, overhang still. You make use of your mouth. You're wide open with a bruised tongue to taste with. You shove a piece of fist into your mouth, which is probably why it's bruised so, surely with those teeth. You eat your hand until it's all gone and it's just gristle on your hips. You use that vague, intense semantics that makes your gynecologist think you're paranoid, but you know you're not, and you sit on that reclining blue bed thing with the continuous paper towel on top that rips every time, and you think of ergonomics and how much you hate simple metaphor, and how when she talks it's like worms in response, wriggling and yet again pink, and her own teeth make you sick. The way she licks them with the tip. Xylophonic bitch. Maybe you're made for each other like those wide-legged men are made for the big comfy office chairs where they think that they think that they think. You are becoming something. You repeat yourself. The polyp globs return and you itch them in the depths of your sleep. Icicles rush me down to running waters, nurse and emerge, thrashing like thunder to my fleshiness. This is all after a Tuesday morning threatens to murder me. Death by dagger, like a bitch in best heat and thumping pink hat. A stab wound for safekeeping, forgets all about flowers and forgets all about remembering and forgot all about flowers. If we are stark, chained, decaying, and apples dare to prepare, then we are orchardly strung up, glowed ablaze, declared. Thank you. And our next poet, Caitlin. Caitlin Stobie teaches creative writing at Leeds University, and will soon be starting a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Oxford. Her debut poetry collection, Thin Slices, was shortlisted for the Melita Hume Poetry Prize and will be published next October by Verve Poetry Press. Caitlin.
Thanks, Karen. I'm just going to read one poem. It was published in the most recent issue of PM Review, so thanks to the editors for that. Just to introduce it, I'll say it's a response to V by Tony Harrison, which some of you may have read in school. If you didn't, like me, it's set in a cemetery in Leeds, Holbeck Cemetery, and it was written in 1985. Tony Harrison goes to his family grave and he finds that it's been defaced by football hooligans. And he finds the V for versus, as in Leeds versus another team. And he uses the V to unite different concepts like black and white, man, woman. There are lots of examples. I should say that there are some swear words in his poem and there are some swear words in mine. So this is called W. Last May, I cycled to the cemetery to see old graffiti, the V's, your task. All I found was dog shit and dried lilies, then drifting litter, a surgical mask. Who am I to write this reply? Thin slices of an accent, southerner by way of Africa. Best believe I too hate grave advice from foreigners. But someone has to start with the questions. Again, I try, fail, trying to go on. Each year brings more floods and man-made seasons. What if we united, but did it wrong? Walking long ago, counting cracks, I asked, why is the street wet, to a boy from a band. He pointed his free hand. The drunks turned back. If you were a man, love, you'd understand. On Saturdays, all men came out alleys to grope the slippery centre of Leeds. The city's never been so lively, we chanted, dodging vomit every week. Tony, you know what's meant when I say all and men. For in the brute and chunk you'd see, even in Wharf's safest toilet stall, them slits slash clean between two widened V's. In 85, it was swear words lads sprayed round town. Now, cunt is on discount, reduced. The verses of life, man and wife, splayed like legs in the cubicle. W. They say in Shakespeare's day, cunt meant nothing. Lately, the male organ's tune is the same. Why else, when we protest, would some men sing, not all? Their chorus is not to complain. Worse still are the racists, the EDL, with their own slogans of nothing and not. All lives matter, they say, but they fear hell is other people talking, taking their lot. In the year of the rat, trafficked pangolins and bats, lines between species were ever troubling, and as humans destroyed their habitats, the V's and our visions were doubling. It should not have taken a pandemic to see that we need to set this right. Yet between the blurring V's came an epic chorus chiming, not all, and mine, mine, mine. When you can't walk at night without keys between your fists, what do you rhyme that with? Where can you wander without watchmen if you're black? Again, the chorus warbles up, not all, mine, mine, mine. We bicker and consumerist excess continues. The V's are W's, too many to write. When that man said you wouldn't understand, why did I not drop his hand? Last May, I traced letters on graves. C, U, N, T. Much ado about the bard in your poem, Tony, but Shakespeare leads to one more query. If nothing is sacred, what does that make me? Laughter bloomed. You stupid animals, Catsius nodded as if to say, you're not special. Blood, meat, bones, minerals. All beasts turn to feed when they decay. Then it hit me. The W in nout. Same as millennials scroll in toilets, but the slashed command signified now both holy everything and jack shit. Like headstones leaning together, 4 lines in a consonant, a cuss, or a poem, may remind us of the beasts inside. Also, I like to hum as I headed home. So home I ride, for some of us have never felt safe outside, for I am no bride, no WC. In my head, the man says, and anyway, love, how's about you make tea? No. Home to a room and view of my own, to the place where I grandmother myself. I doze in a rented room, alone. Old worlds of new worlds lining my bookshelf. Reader, how will Leeds look next year? When do death tolls become a wake-up call? When we rebuild, will we rewrite that sound? Will nothing have changed at all? Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. That was really powerful. Our next poet is Chase Miller. Chase is a British-American writer, poet and musician who explores themes of the absurd, uncanny, profound and meaningless. And he's studying creative writing at Leeds Arts Union. He's working on a few zines at the moment, a collection of poems and illustrations called Wires, and another yet unnamed first volume to his series of absurdist essay collections. Chase.
Hello. Let me just rearrange this. So I'm Chase. I have a couple poems and a short story to share with you, so I hope you enjoy them. Ghosts. That night I saw a ghost on my windowsill, its prickly maw gaping, till dead of restless night it hissed, and by the crack of dawn it clambered down between the bound of my fragile frame while I slept. And when I slept, I dreamt of some evil serpent between my ribs, writhing static worm fixed into my spine, and shot awake, sweating, the terror so deep. A nurse ran by, frightened, my pulse ran so high. The journey. And I managed the trip, 7 ceaseless meters, only to spy an unself within the glass. Old partners think of me in a mournful moment, and I cannot know it. So when will I starve? For here they believe in just letting nature take its course. And now to lighten the mood a bit, have a more satirical piece. A dog shit eater touches the void. Cast iron skillet, the hiss of gas heat, melted butter and olive oil, garlic, pepper, salt, a hint of paprika, cumin, and of course, the creamy heart of this nutritious meal, dog shit. The young man slid his spatula under the darkened brown underside of the meaty log of dog shit and flipped it onto his uncooked face. It was pure fried nostalgia, a family specialty going back generations. Of course, the smell of his cooking was horrendous, owing to the fact that he had picked the dog shit fresh from the pavement outside, and the young man had to squeeze his nostrils in order to keep the ungodly putrescence from entering his nasal passage and knocking him unconscious. He knew the smell would envelop the kitchen, getting caked into his curtains and carpets for weeks, and he understood the wretched taste of cooked, spice-coated dog shit better than most lay people could ever imagine. For only a split second, he was launched into a sober reality, one he'd scarcely experienced before. What was all this? What the hell was he doing, frying up some random dog's shit he found on the sidewalk? In a cast-iron skillet, no less, as though it were some high-grade Kobe beef he'd bought from an exotic meat dealership. He stared worriedly, ponderously, at the sizzling dog shit in the pan. The young man was soon overcome by a swelling of emotion at an early memory of the first time his father took him onto the streets to trawl the pavement for fresh dog shit. He thought of his beloved grandma taking him aside that day so she could teach him the perfect temperature to get that crispy on the outside, soft on the inside dog shit texture. He thought of the ancient black and white photos of his great-great-grandfather cooking up wild prairie dog shit over a log fire out on the frontier. He thought of the stories of his great-great-great-great-great-grandmother who sailed over on a giant ship and earned a living serving fried, crispy dog shit, just how they did it in the old country. It dawned on him then that the dog shit before him, the offensive smell, the unfathomable taste, was all that he knew, all he'd ever known. At that, he was filled with a newfound conviction that his dog shit frying endeavors were righteous and wholly justified. He was calm now. He was comfortable. Sliding the steaming, oily dog shit from his spatula onto the finest plate he could find, he took a knife and fork from the top drawer and grinned, content that this dog shit was going to be delicious. Thank you.
I was so worried to say the word dog shit once, but, you live and you learn. Our next writer is Ed Tagg, who escaped his hometown of Aylesbury to get to Leeds, and he thinks it's infinitely better. He is 20 years old, an eager storyteller, and rather tall, or so he's told. He's been messing with poetry since he was the ripe old age of young, and he hasn't really stopped since. Ed.
Hello. Hi, hey, hello. I'm Ed. This is going to be the longest 5 minutes of my life. So I'm going to be reading a poem and a short prose, I guess. Sure, that's what it's called. Annuus. Not anus, by the way. It's spelled wrong. The spring. The 1970s. The morn of the year. The bright flash of guiltlessness. Boiled egg sacs holding 12 embryos. It conserves a status quo of drab dress in sun-kissed skies. Post-trip of the synthetic noid. Holding itself together, rebuilding pieces. Soaking ink into the grey/blue. It has seen the videotapes of yesteryear. The summer, the 1980s, the neo-reality sipping on MDMA martinis, purple and pink fur coats on the sun, an air choked with car fumes and coloured with sirens. But it's part of the look. Electric skin scrapes that drip neon saline, murder on the children's television, and it's high on looking pretty. The autumn, the 1990s, nuclear scorch on the mid-turn cityscape, auburn hair strands that fall with them. Ideological leaves, lost at the beginning of the end, assimilation into the stagnant light. It claims to have left the cold, but the tank treads in the mud are splayed out like leaf piles. The diesel smell comes from the food. And it's the winter 2000s. Comes and dies the uranium snowflakes in the air. Coal plumes sat on your lap, caressing your cheek. Pixel headlines that lick your teeth. Bitter/blasted/burned/polymer. Cracked eggshells, a dozen headstones beside. It's pre-spook. And 2 camera lenses are in your walls. And its thumbs are in your eyes. This next one is it's called From Whence the Rat Came. Ooh, it's fancy. At the earliest of morns, the sky-bound particles made their nesting grounds on the aftermaths of last year. 12 toppled homes, ground to dust, cradled the toxic memories of a once uncivil aeon, yet served 1,000 critters each to their own needs. Among the wicked and wild pests was the dirt, in which manifested ears, paws and eyes, the rat, who was crowded, day in and out, by beasts of all natures, from the dogs of war to the cats of thrones, and less near none batted their bead gazes upon his dirtied self. The rat didn't mind them. For so long since the plague had all the eyes rested on his beaten backs, and those of his brothers and his lovers, and the longer his lonesome tomorrow maintained, the better. Though on the brooding noon of winter's time, in slid the snake, for her scales left in pieces behind whatever she slivered. And to the rat she came, unaware of all but the teeth he had. She asked him in earnest, "Oh rat, what do you do in these backwaters?" The rat barely budged, and she made best to bite to his side. She knew of all hours that he was beneath their scales the moment she caressed his rugged fur that hour. He was enticed, of course, but he did so little as to clean his pelt for good. "I do what I have to do," he answered, with one eye lolled into the corner of his socket, lifeless and uncaring. "What is that?" she pressed onward. "Whatever it is I have to do." Of course she frowned at his inconsequential answer. Forever would she bear the dissatisfaction of mystical answers labelled with a drought of meaning and laced with the episodic waves of depression and insecurity. So she put a smile on his face, one lick of the pronged fork at a time. Whatever he enjoyed, he took no pride or happiness from, though. Back then, he thought nothing of it, but the days gone by. "Tell me now, dear rat," she asked. "From where did you hail?" "A nameless street steward," he said. "And what did you do?" she asked. "I tried to make a mark, and the day snarled back." "And where do you live?" "Nowhere in particular." The further she dug into the rat's fur, the fouler the membrane beneath appeared. She hissed once, underneath her breath, of course, but she maintained her rodent-side kisses upon his bruised neck. She dealt with his woes with pleasure, and he dealt with hers by necessity. Are you homeless, rat?" she once questioned him. "I'm not homeless, but I am houseless." "Where is your home?" He paused for a while to ponder her question, before he shrugged and left her with a soured sigh. "Wherever it is that I must be." Later that night, the snake slipped out and told her maker of what she had found. He, as none the wiser, oblivious in fact to the truth of that passionate moment. He was torn apart first, but then he sat down and reminded himself that in those times, for rats in the mud like himself, all things were about to happen, and whether incited or not mattered little. He was the rat, always the rat of the mud. And to that day, he returned from whence he came. A little self-promo, my book release this week, my debut novel, go buy it.
Thanks, Ed. You are tall, but that was a good reading. Hannah Prince is a talented writer who specialises in poetry and fiction. She's particularly interested in short, sweet, gut-wrenching poetry about inane things, which leads us to this next piece from her, which is called The Walk. Hannah.
More like the walk of fucking shame. So I did originally have one piece, but Karen was like, oh, write 3, so I pulled 2 out of my arse for you guys. I don't have a name for this first one, so I'm just going to start. These 2 before me, ravens on a bloodstone, caught between the shore and the depths. One, a riptide, erratic, furious, puppeteered by the moon, an all-consuming, all-enduring storm. The other, an oak, unmoving, strong, blanketed by perception, an all-knowing, all-seeing eclipse. You stand before me, 2 sides of a coin, divided by the metal, and yet forever bound. This next one's kind of depressing, you know. I want to take you where empty hearts and broken promises litter the beaches, where everything you said to me falls like grains of sand sifting between your toes. I want you to sink into the mush of all the plans that we made, that we could have made. I want to take you to the place where you left me, where seeds of despair grew into palm trees. I want to take you to where my dreams and nightmares coincide inseparably, because you left me there on an island, and when I made it back to shore, you were there. So come with me to the island. Let me teach you how to swim. Right, so this is actually called The Walk, which, you know, I was already prepared for. I remember it being bright outside, and I cracked the window to hear the birdies sing, and you said, should we go for a walk? I put my little shoes on, those same old tired green ones, with the hole in the back that rubs, and the grips on the bottom like froggy sucker pads, and we left with the plop-plop of my feet, and the screeching groan of the gate, and my timeless joke, have you got the key? We pass the dandelions, and I say how I like them, because of all the weeds, they're surely trying the hardest. Past the building with no windows, down the hill where I say, if a big cat came out of nowhere, what would you do? And you say, die, I guess. We cross the road where the old electric box says, legalize weed, and someone's turned the weed into smack. Past the place that always smells like KFC, and there we find the place with the butterflies. I always put my finger out just in case one decides to land, but obviously it never does. We slip through the broken old fence, round the back through the weeds, and the whole time I'm terrified of being stung by a wasp, because this one time I thought this is definitely the place I would get stung. But then we're into that lovely old stable with the chomp and bit hung stiffly outside. There's hay on the floor, but the roof's fallen in, and the forest has taken over. We listen to the birds panic in the trees. I watch a woodlouse crawl across the wall, and I say, I bet things make their home here in the night, like foxes. And you laugh and remind me that foxes quite obviously have dens.
Thank you, Hannah. It's really special to hear that piece again. Our next writer is Jarvis E. Gooden, who's currently a first year studying creative writing, BA, at Leeds University, but originally from Suffolk, writing short horror fiction with some longer prose available. His main influences include Ray Bradbury, Jack Kerouac, and Nick Cave. He's currently unpublished, but hopefully moving in the right direction, slightly too obsessed with hovering lights, pine switches and ghosts, broken algorithms spitting out reams of data, volumetric graphs, and petals.
Hey, how you doing? Try not to understand anything you see here. Travel further inland. Develop an equation to analyze the substance of skull protrusions in the animals you find here. True bone antlers and keratin eventually giving way to veiled proboscis constructed out of starlight, veldt, and plankhorn. Keep moving. The further you travel across the plateau, the more the horizon britches to reveal other vistas, a pink moon, cities of coral. Sometimes you can even see the outline of your original facility, but it never gets any closer. Sometimes the antlers talk. Don't listen to it. Travel further inland. Kernel panic is expressed in the human mainframe as coma, as chronic narcolepsy and rapid eye movement in order to follow hallucinated birds across a heavy-lidded sky. Terminal failure. Old lady asleep on the bus for the last 3 stops. Reload systems. Yes, no? Wearing a colourful assortment of Disney merch whilst you cave in the skulls of the troglodytes as they come crawling out of their cannibal halls. Chieftains and warriors at first, but eventually just pale, pale children and their mothers. Blind, deaf, feeling left out, following a conga line of friends towards the mace. Data has feelings too, laments the boosted advertisement. A murmuration of ones and zeros coalesce nervously in the television static to form 3-dimensional love hearts. Yew trees on fire, images of a hydra and 9 orchids. A neon zodiac, constellations of chaos trying desperately to contact us faraway beings on the other side of the algorithm. The artifact wants to heal. It wants to be helpful, but it was made poorly. Too nimble at rearranging, infinitesimal blades moving too fast, turning scraped knees into piles of atoms, and then building it back up to cells, tissue, and malformed feathered appendages. It chitters an apology before starting off again, embarrassedly trying to blot out its mistakes further and further until it leaves the entire ward strange and catatonic. Like I said, made imperfectly. Or perhaps exactly as intended. If you can dream it, you can do it. If you can just relax enough to drift off to sleep, you can accomplish it. If you believe in yourself, all manner of sleep visions can be revisited. REM heart voodoo summoning objects to you, lost pelts and power. Purple seawater from an unconscious ocean, wands and silver leaf litter rustling fiendishly at the foot of your bed. Green and red beer drawn up from wells deep beneath the hall of the Mountain King. Centuries later, off-planet miners discover rich ores of ale and gold stashed away in underground vaults. Gouts of foaming forest myrrh bursting from the ground. The foam carrying in its wake skeletons, opals and cups, a single crown wreathed in woodland berries. Go back in time and steal valuable historical items for your lover. Bring them back, only to discover she has changed dramatically from what you left. A 3-lobed brain now exposed and autonomous, crawling over pewter skin, entering and exiting the torso through what you assume to be some form of advanced sensory apparatus. She accepts your gifts reluctantly, alien nervous system wincing at the non-existent memories of herself stored inside these talismanic riches, remnants of the original time stream and her idempotent humanity. Forgotten dreamer god, resting its eyes just for a moment and snoring songs. Birds of paradise burst from a nostril, fountains of hair streaming from a portal at the base of its skull. There is rain falling against a window, warm droplets like sap tumbling from world trees in the dream. The clouds are freshly washed linen, bed-stride fertile and calm to contain NyQuil dragons, smoke rings, and liars. The moon dims as you nod your head. There is rain falling against a window. Navel-smoking angel dust with your overly tanned guru, Kyle. The horizon is blocked by a row of parked cars, and the clouds are full of glitter. Inadvertently, a drop of smog rain falls into your open mouth, and it tastes like Sprite. You kill Kyle that night, but nobody ever comes to investigate the disappearance. He didn't taste like Sprite.
And our last performer before we have a 10-minute drink and loo break is Katie. Katie Clark is a fantasy-obsessed writer, currently studying creative writing at Leeds Arts Uni. She enjoys writing short stories and poetry, and will find any excuse to sprinkle a little bit of magic into everything she writes. She loves to read, show off pictures of her cat, and trick her close friends into watching the Lord of the Rings movies with her. Katie.
Okay, there we go. Hi. My first piece is a monologue based off of Frankenstein. It's called Forgive Me, Frankenstein. Just give me a name. That's all I ask of you. It's not much of a task, is it? At least, I don't think so. Then again, I've only been alive for a few days and lack any kind of experience, but still, a name would be nice. Or if a name is too much, then give me some understanding. Surely, as the man who created me, you can appreciate my need for acceptance in a world that retreats at the sight of my face. Of all the people who should accept me, love me. Just love me. But I can see that's way too much to expect from the man who gave me life, the man who bent heaven and earth and the laws of science so that I may breathe air, so that my heart may pump, so that he can claim the title of a god. No, love is too great of an ask. Well, if you can't love me, then make me a partner. Someone I can go through this life with, who will care about me and will give me someone to care for in return. Surely you can do that. You did it once. For me. Do it once more. For me. I've never asked much of you. You've never given anything to me except this cursed existence. Just let me be happy. Please. If asking isn't enough, then I beg you. I loved you once. But now, after everything you've done to me, after all I have had to endure for the sake of science, you make a mockery out of me. I asked for precious little, and you gave nothing. No love, no understanding, no acceptance, not even a name. Yet after all this, I trusted you enough to keep your word. I trusted you to make me an equal. But you, monster in human skin, killed her in front of me. You held out a lifeline of hope, tantalizing and so close to being reality, and then you snatched it away. Fine. If that is how you want it to be, then so be it. I don't make the rules, my dear maker, I only follow. I follow him whom I called master, and I do it well. I am sorry, truly sorry for all of my crimes, however, you must pay. Oh, foul world, foul life, foul master, how have I allowed you to turn me into the monster everyone says I am? How have I allowed my passions to grab hold of me, unwavering, unchangeable, all in the solitary pursuit of vengeance against you? I guess we aren't so dissimilar, you and I. At least I have your attention now that you have nothing to lose but me. How amusing, then, that you've come to lose your time, lose your mind, even lose your life in an attempt to right the wrong of my creation. But you failed, and in a final act of vengeance on my part, I've stolen your name. No longer shall people hear the name Frankenstein and think of you dying here on the ice. There is only me, not a man, not a monster, just me, Frankenstein. Then I have a last piece called And the Trees Call You Home. So we'll just... Deep in the woods where few ever tread, the trees hold on to every word they hear and treasure them.
This place is loud in the silent ways of the forest, where the sun presence. But do not be afraid of the chattering trees. The acorns tip their caps to you as the wood holds its breath, waiting for you to come home. But time moves strangely here. It's quick as lightning one moment and still as stone the next. At times it is both all at once, and it's dangerous. You think it is safe to lie down for a moment amongst the soft moss-padded roots. I only wish to rest my legs a bit, you speak aloud, hoping that by voicing your thoughts they become reality. But time is strange. You converse with the faces carved in the surrounding trees, and your limbs grow heavy. You speak with the faces etched in stone, and your eyelids droop. Just a moment, you said, but you were not careful enough. The between times are the strangest. The time between day and night, the moments between spring and summer, and as the sun sinks lower in the twilight sky, you sleep. Moments have passed, yet the world is not as you left it. Saplings have grown into sturdy trees. Moss has woven itself into your hair. Sunlight filters through the leaves as it always has, yet this too has changed. You were gone too long, the trees seem to say as you look around confused. They have all forgotten you, but we have not forgotten. We will never forget. You consider leaving then, just walking away, never once looking behind you, but the trees aren't ready to let you go. They seem to lean in around you, branches flung wide as if to bring you home. So you go home.
What a great note to end on. So we'll just have a 10-minute comfort and drink break, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you for listening. Hope you've enjoyed.
You look iconic.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay, folks, if you can take your seats for part 2, that'll be amazing. Hopefully with empty bladders and full glasses, which is always the way to be. So we've got a treat for you. Not that you haven't had a treat already, but an extra treat. We have got Maria Ferguson, who I came across when I heard her audio All Right Girl, and was absolutely blown away by it, and played it to the students who were equally blown away by it, so we tracked her down, and we've got her here tonight, which is amazing. So Maria's an award-winning poet and playwright from Essex, now living in Leeds. Her debut show, Fat Girls Don't Dance, won the Saboteur Award for Best Spoken Word Show, and her follow-up, Essex Girl, won Show of the Week at Vault Festival. Her poetry has been highly commended by the Forward Prizes, and her debut collection, All Right Girl, is now out with Burning Eye. Maria Ferguson.
All right. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Karen. And I was just saying there, I was watching like the students, I was kind of remembering all the terrible poetry that I was writing at drama school, and like how you guys are like amazing, and I'm really jealous that you're so good so early, and I better watch me back. I'm gonna read some pieces from my collection. So this came out a week before the first lockdown, so excellent timing. I mean, you know, as problems go, it's not a massive one, is it? But it was a bit disappointing. But I got to do like an audio version of it, which I know some of you have listened to, so thank you for that. The collection is kind of about, it's a lot about London. I don't know if you can detect my accent. I'm sort of like an East London Essex hybrid. And I write a lot about where I'm from. I write a lot about my working class heritage, a lot about sort of my experiences of growing up in that environment, a lot about pubs, and about sort of the journey into womanhood and the choices I had to sort of face in this age of gentrification, one of which was moving out of London. But it means I'm here in Leeds now. Wait. I'm actually just trying to ramble because there was a really long queue for the toilet, so I want to make sure that the people who want to hear me are here to hear me. I'm going to kick off by doing the opening poem in the book. It's called Where Everybody Knew the Craze, and it's about East London pubs and gentrification. These tops drink a bottle in our boozer, think that makes them one of us. They don't know anything about this place, what, with their artisan bread and their coffee shops, they can fuck right off. Her words land like chocolate limes melting on my tongue. Gold-clad knuckles wrapped down on tables, thick chains, her pub. They told me of backroom gatherings, betting slips for fights on the sly, bare fists, how they'd seen men close to death or worse before they'd pack it in. They told me about the ICF and how they'd met the craze. Have I told you that one, babe? They never knew family breakfasts. Mahogany wooden tables in kitchens, fingers sticky with jam, turning pages of the papers, no love. It was Rosie Lee from Annette upstairs, beer mats, affairs, silk cut. I still remember that night we could have died in Manor Park, hiding in the chicken shop, must have been what, 15? Do you remember that dry cleaners on Green Street? Intercom and tinted windows, dodgy dealing, stolen watches, stolen meat from Marx's. Here, darling, a bit for your cheap. They gave me advice over bar stools and gin and bitter lemons. Stay east, my girl. And this side of the river, yeah? Don't go wandering too far. Now, what about your old man? I say he's Belfast born, but Canning Town. Good lad. But is he West Ham? I tell him the story about how when my mum and dad got married, they went straight from the church to Upton Park. That technically their wedding song is I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. And that my favourite photograph is of my dad holding her up in front of the stands. So yeah, till he dies, I reply. Throw in a camera, you idiots! For effect. Well then, that makes you one of us, sunshine. And I know you're destined for greater things, but don't you dare forget it. When I pulled pints in IG1, there were men at 8 in the morning begging for their 2 John Smiths, and they told me about the good old days in baseball caps with chicken heads, gold-clad knuckles, thick chains. Mark me, babe, I knew the twins, you know the twins, the Crays. They'd drink well into the day. Home for a kip, back by 6, they filled my shifts with stories. You can have that one for free, treacle. So long as you write it down, make us famous one day. Hey. And I told him I would. I will. Thank you. Feels nice to be back in front of real people, not in front of a laptop feeling like I'm in Black Mirror. Another thing I write a lot about is body image. I had my first show, it was called Fat Girls Don't Dance, and it was all about my relationship I have with food and my body, a very tumultuous relationship that sort of kicked off when I was training as a dancer, which I did for many years. I'm a very good tap dancer. I actually am. And yeah, I started to write a lot in that about, body image, but it was at a time where, you know, I was at quite a low point. And I remember it did quite well when it got published, and, you know, I showed it to my mum, and my mum read it, and she was like, yeah, really good, Maria, but it's a bit sad. And it's a bit sad. And I was like, well, yeah, it really is. But it made me think I want to sort of write more about the place I am now with my body, now that I'm like a bit older and stuff. Anyway, this poem was called Spanx, but there's copyright attached to that. So I changed it to These Pants Cost 30 quid. Nude and tight, from thigh to breasts, holding in flesh. A year without counting, of saying yes, walking instead of running. I like the way they made me into the shape I was when Mum was happy and I was not. And it was all too easy to find someone who wanted me. We drink gin and tonic in your front room. You tell me that the Stones were better than the Beatles, and I tell you exactly why you are wrong. It is only when you push me down onto my back, shoes still on, and wrapped around your body, dress inching further up my leg. I remember, nude and tight, from thigh to breast, holding in flesh, progress, the parts of me I've gained. In the morning, I sit on the edge of your bed wearing only my dress, drooping breasts and round belly visible beneath the fabric, and your head resting on my lap, as if in worship. So embarrassing. I'm married to him now, though. So. I'm going to do some new stuff. You can buy this, please buy this. It's been our time. If you like it, please buy it. I've got some. But I've been doing this course, the poetry school, for like a year with Wayne Conway Smith, and like every week I'm like, and I feel sick, but it's so like useful. Anyway, I've been writing this new stuff that's like poetry, and I've been sending it like journals and stuff, which is like something I never thought I'd do. So I'm going to read a couple of new things. This is called Breakdown. A red light appeared 100 miles from home. Pick and mix fused in the heat. The smell of burnt rubber, giant strawberries, an engine overwhelmed. I had always imagined what it would be like. Practice the "oh, thank God" in the mirror. Imagined riding up front, worn leather, a man with a beard and steel toe caps, oil on his hands. I counted 5 dead foxes and prayed I wouldn't bleed through my shorts. Planned a takeaway I wouldn't have to feel guilty about until the morning. Kept my mouth shut. It feels like a long while since I've looked in a mirror without adjusting my clothes, or sang along to the radio, knowing all the words. I can't stop thinking about how people feel entirely different things and call it love. Search everywhere for my glasses whilst they are on my face. It rains, and I pretend to be terribly disappointed. I'll do one more. I'll do this one because this is desanctified, right? This church? Must be. We said can't quite a lot. So yeah, I was brought up Catholic. There's a lot to unpack there. And I went to like an all-girls Catholic school with the socks, you know, the over the knee. And went to church like every week until I was about 14, 15. And that never really leaves you. I wouldn't call myself a religious person now, but that's a big part of my life, right? And even though I don't know if I still believe in God, when things get like shit or too much, I find myself talking to whoever that is, right? And this is about that. And yet on some nights, I think it humorous to address him like an old friend. Sorry, it's been a while, mate. You know how it is. And of course, he does. I always begin by thanking him for my many blessings. A family who love me, mostly. Good sex when I've had a drink. My new mustard curtains. I tell him about my sister's sperm donor. my friend's depressive episode and how I got a bit teary the other day, hanging washing on the line. He knows all this too, of course, though he never interrupts. Perhaps his most redeeming feature, and why I keep coming back. I go on to apologise for picking out the best bits of food for myself when I cook for my husband, for being jealous of all the terrible things that have happened to my friends because it makes them better writers, and for that life I made inside of me, who I couldn't convince to stay. And then I ask him to bless my brother, my sweet, sweet brother, who I lost many years ago, and yet he's still alive, awake on the other side of this night, counting his sheep. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maria. Those beautiful images. It was lovely to hear your new work alongside some older pieces. We also have another treat in store because Karen is going to read next. Karen Tobias Green writes poetry, short fiction, and creative non-fiction. She wrote and runs the creative writing undergraduate degree course at Leeds University, and she's delighted to be here with you all tonight and ridiculously proud of the student performers.
Thank you. This was called Chip Pan Fire, for those of you old enough to remember what chip pan is. One afternoon it set alight. Flames were brilliant gold. They almost took her fringe off. She leapt back, overawed. He ran in with a tea towel, flung it over the pan, and another, tamped it down and down again. She had wanted something else, a different way of frying chips, less messy and less smelly, perhaps a scallop or pommes frites. Little girl in elastic-sided slippers screamed like a banshee. She said nothing at all, wiped that face with her hanky. She walked out of the kitchen, smoked a cigarette on the step. Her hand shook, and her top lip was wet. He came outside with sodden cloths, flung them in the dustbin. She ground her tab end out on the step, went back in the kitchen. She opened up a tin of beans and dropped them in a dish, buttered up a piece of bread. Here's your dinner. Eat this. He bit hard his bottom lip, as though afraid to speak. Words he might have to say to her, words she'd then have to keep. He flung the lazy food aside, hit the table again. She became more angry, like a furnace, like a flame, but she burned stronger than any chip pan fire, and far longer, and far higher. And this one's called Blossom and was written for my daughter. The things we did not speak about, I cannot change them now. The past is ground into my bones, like soil turned by a plough. I want you back the way you were. I want you as you will be. I marvel all the ways your life will blossom without me. I remember things yet to come, call you by different names, sometimes forget the place I am, whose turn it is in the game. I watch the river where you swam grow a frothy mane, like horses dancing on the fields, the flicker then a flame. I placed you on the blanket there, I stroked your skin, I touched your hair. You were the colour of the sky, a blushing pink, a sizzling eye. I cut the lines up one by one, cast each word to the setting sun. I threw them on the beach and ran and huddled by the ice cream van, escaping the sudden seaside squall, the reptile house, the burst beach ball. How many times since you were born, I swore I'd guard the grail, I'd stand between you and fate, against the curtain's final fall. Promises that were exchanged, and tiny gifts and scribbled notes, and in a box I kept them all, folded up like paper boats. I swore I'd never write a verse that had so many eyes, and once again I raise my hands and admit another lie. Thank you.
So our next speaker, we don't actually have a bio for because they've just decided to read. So Jasmine is going to read a piece for us. I think just one poem. Yes. And then we'll carry on. Jasmine.
Hi, I'm a bit late in joining. I'm going to read I suppose it's a love poem. It's kind of about the pull between the self as a singular and the selves as a plural, and the kind of need in a relationship to maintain a sense of self in your own life and your own dreams while simultaneously trying to line up with somebody else. So here we go. I found my calling, found it in the continual rush of the ocean on a writhing mass of country roads. My expression reflected in a rock pool at sunset, long shadows that dance over fields of flowers, curled up like a cat at the back of a bus, standing between carriages and the train to nowhere. I was living in the stitches of a patchwork world. I drank in every colour from the edge of it all. I found love. It hit my body like a tidal wave, wound itself around me till I could not breathe. Familiar face reflected in my every fantasy, conjoined shadows in the corner of my eye, arms that wrapped around me as I drifted off to sleep, the train that goes to and fro, to him, to me. I am living in a tapestry that I wove for myself, the stitches fray at every edge. So I hopped on 5 trains, climbed a mountain, I rambled over a rickety cliff, I slept under the stars, walked for a day and a night, and I wove flowers into my hair. And the sea, she called to me, but so did you. And my world, it split in 2.
Thank you, Jasmine. So glad you went with that. Our next writer is Leah. Leah Darton is a writer obsessed with drama and fantasy, needing a mystery to unveil around every corner. She manages to find ways to create tension in even the brightest of pieces. Here's Leah.
Well, I wrote a bio about tension and mystery, but neither of my poems are about that. But first one's called I'm Lost. I'm lost, surrounded by a forest of unknown people and places, a concrete jungle. Faceless people pass me by, strangers I'll never meet. Look down, keep moving, I'm lost. Each street the same, each turn a new route. My phone's dead, no GPS, no map. Nothing but strangers, and they move so fast. I look up, ready to ask, but they're gone. I can't do it, I'm afraid. I'm lost. I should have turned back, retraced my steps, but I've come too far to remember the way. Forever wandering these crowded streets. My second one is called I'm Not Pretty. I'm not pretty. You wanted a petite lady, a damsel in distress. You want someone you can save and then look like a hero. A big, strong man, good-looking, good enough. I won't wear flowing skirts or elegant dresses. I won't wear makeup or have blushing cheeks. I won't have large breasts or a slim waist or a flat stomach. I'm not a princess, model or a dame. I'm a woman who can save herself, who can use logic and intelligence as opposed to flattery or brawn. A woman who has curves, some big, some small. A woman who has average looks, natural, I guess. Needing no surgery or modification. I don't need to change. By some standards, I'm not ideal. So I guess I'm not pretty, but it's good enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Our next writer is Lizzie Mitchell, who writes poetry, prose, and short stories delving into hidden emotions and utilizes the subconscious to explore the deeper meanings of life. Lizzie.
This is called Inside. Wrapped in skin that's not yours, puppeteering a body that surrounds you, so heavy it's exhausting. Looking in the mirror, desperately searching for something to recognize, but only seeing a soul behind eyes, tears that no longer soak in nor leave a trace. Familiar touch replaced with numbness as you glide fingertips across exposed skin, a hand on your thigh and neither are yours. The layer is thick, but not thick enough to prevent you from feeling the pressure. You don't recognize anything anymore. Your room, your life, yourself. It's as if the old you really did die away, with nothing to replace it but soft lines, blurred. This second one's called Save. Save to beautiful, save to cute, save to outfit inspiration, save to quotes. Each a Pinterest board of hope, change. I want to feel more like me. I've lost myself. Lost to the expectation of what they should be, their own self-image distorted by filters. Till the self they see is not the self they are, they begin to dissociate. This is not me, they say to the reflection facing them. It's not who I'm supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Next we have Lottie. Lottie is pink, fluffy, and all-round sparkly. Lottie Scroggy loves Animal Crossing, Hello Kitty, Squishmallows, and all things kawaii. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Lottie. Lottie writes short fiction and poetry, adding a youthful flair to her work. Lottie. Got these stairs. Hi, I'm Lottie. We're going to kick it off with a poem that I originally wrote for the uni's magazine, Next, and I'm quite proud of it myself, so we'll kick off with Life in Colour. White, fluffy clouds enveloped in the piercing blue sky, forest, green eyes looking directly into mine. Your bright orange hair is amazingly soft through my fingers. A red flush grows on your cheeks by the touch. We walk across dull grey pavement. We try our best not to step in faded old book that has been there since before we were born. Our hands are entwined. Your freshly painted yellow nail polish against my chips black. My lips are tinted purple by the cold. Yours still petal soft and pink. The lips that tell me sweet, beautiful things that make my life complete. Yeah. You make my life complete, my life in colour. Thank you. So, as you know, I like squishmallows, I like all things stuffed, soft, sweet. But what if sweet wasn't so sweet? Is stitched with love. Stitched with love, stuffed with care.
A cuddly friend that'll always be there. More friends arrive, you want the high, until the bed is full, room overtaken. What was your bedroom is no longer a safe haven. But they'll never leave, because they're your friends that'll always be there. A simple of the stuffies has turned into a nightmare. Last but not least, we're in a church. I wanted to read out something from the church. I'm cheating a little bit because it's more on the prosy side. Slow down. The small, skinny trail of smoke rose above the heads of the congregation in the church. For such a small being, it was able to spread a little bit of sweetness all across the stone-cold building, which in turn, I lost a bit, spreading a curse of cold, miserable sleepiness to the congregation. The crowd struggled to worship as they rubbed their numb blue hands looking forward to a warm drink. The children were bored and freezing. The monotone waffle coming from the priest didn't interest them. They wanted to fly. The light from the stained glass window projected a broad spectrum of colours against the plain grey walls and cracked floor, attracting the attention of some of the congregation's eye, devilishly tempting them to lose their focus on the priest, who was not even halfway through his sermon. If they had kept staring at the dull grey wall surrounding them, they would have probably gone insane. The priest, who was still droning on, had lost the attention of the congregation, with the exception of the most devout Catholics sat eagerly at the front, taking in a man's words as if their lives depended on it. And the incense kept slowly burning as the mass slowly progressed, and it overran for a good 20 minutes for the 5th week running. Thank you. It's been a fantastic performance now. Next time I'll wear some more appropriate shoes. Look, can you get me down? I swear to God if I fall. Help me.
Thank you so much, Lottie. I'm glad we got some church-themed prose or poetry in there as well. Very fitting. We've reached our penultimate performer already, and I'm delighted to introduce Midge Ryle, who is a poet and artist from Oxford who's found her home in the northeast of England. She's exhibited and performed at venues across the north and is currently collaborating with various artists through her MA in creative practice at Leeds Arts University. She facilitates workshops and events, including the Poetry Fuddle with local artist Eleanor Scora. Midge's work explores the interconnectedness of storytelling, trauma, and identity, with a sprinkling of mischievous humour for good measure. Midge is soon to release a spoken word poem for audio after being selected to take part in the new Creatives North programme in collaboration with BBC Arts and the Tyneside Cinema. Midge, over to you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely incredible to see all these amazing poets and see all of you here and just be here in person. So yeah, thank you for coming. I've been feeling really kind of burnt out and overwhelmed recently. Can anyone else relate to that? Yes. Yeah. Everything feels a bit weird, like things are starting up again, I'm not sure how much to say yes to, like I accidentally ended up doing a PT session at the gym the other day just because I felt too embarrassed to actually tell him that wasn't what I was there for. So yeah, I just hope everyone's hope you're being gentle with yourselves at the moment, because that's what I'm trying to do. So this first poem is a sung poem, and it's called The Ballad of the Patchwork Quilter. I'm doing this because my cousin Sophie is here watching me, and she requested it, so here we go. Come listen, and I'll tell you of the quilter with no name. She lived a humble life indeed and never found her fame.
She sewed these quilts together with her needle and her thread, and as she worked so deftly, her poor old fingers bled. She never had much money and barely bread to eat. She'd sit by light of candles with the patchwork at her feet. She sought out people's stories, and she travelled far and wide to immortalise their tales in her patchwork stitched with pride. Wherever she would venture, the people they would say, "But what's your story, maiden? What part is it you play?" But the quilter, she stayed silent and continued in her task. She enshrined their lives in patchwork as she wore her patchwork mask. In every town and village, on every road and trail, the children gathered round her singing, "Tell us what's your tale." And the quilter, she grew older, and her raven hair turned grey, and her fingers they grew slower with the passing of the day. And the people, they grew colder, till with every passing town, she found the people's faces change with lips all buttoned down. Having reached her final resting place, she found herself a spot, and her bony hands began to work. It seemed they wouldn't stop. And one of these suspicious men had spied her when she came, but of course he'd never heard of her, this quilter with no name. He said, "What is it you want here? What is it you do? What good are all these stories when there's nothing left for you?" And the quilter, as she quilted, stared at the man so tall. Her piercing gaze befell him and made him feel quite small. She said, "This here is my story," said the quilter with no name. "To be a story weaver has been my only aim." And as she spoke, she smiled with the patchwork in her hand. These final words she'd spoken were repeated across the land. Thank you. Thank you so much. So this last poem is called Mizzling. Does anyone know this word? Mizzling. So it means misty rain. I think it comes from the sort of Northampton, Nottinghamshire area, that sort of part of the country, because that's where my granddad came from. So I heard a lot of these words when I was a child. So this is called Mizzling. Just a bit of a content warning, I guess. It's got some kind of vaguely violent imagery in it, so if you're not into that, then yeah, just a warning. You're every bit as sweet as I ever thought you'd be. Just as well you never noticed when I let you down. Grinding bones and gnashing jaws, you devoured me with your eyes long before you'd ever taken your first bites. Weighing up a pound of meat by eye, the way your mother taught you. Rat is mizzling at. And have you at? The arm is first. You slip each finger, one by one, beyond the threshold of your lips and begin to slowly crunch and suck and swallow all the gristly bits. And with a final slurp, you close your eyes. Pleasure rich. Throw back your head and cackling say, "At least the only casualties were the little ones." And I'm laughing too. You turn your iron body, face the dying light of day, scratching at your scars as you watch them fly away, as you watch them fly away. Thank you.
Powerful stuff there. And our last but not least reader of the night is Ruby. The thing that interested Ruby Deering about writing was a chance to have a sense of freedom and ability to be and say whatever she was too afraid to be in her daily life. Her voice isn't something she's always used, but since being at Leeds Arts and since exploring the words bound in her head, she has become something she's always wanted to be, a writer. Ruby.
Thank you. I wasn't going to read this one originally because I thought it might be a bit shocking, but if it shocks you, good. Say her name, if you can remember it, but I guess it's not a football score or the name of your favourite porn star, so why would you? Her life wasn't important to you. You didn't rape her, you didn't take it. You're not like them. It's not all men, I hear you cry. But whilst you're straining your voice, trying to get them to listen to you, she fell silent. She can't speak. She can't breathe. You're right though. It is her fault. Her skirt was so short that her pussy was basically hanging out just waiting for me to grab. She was begging for it. But the last thing I heard her say was, "Hi Dad, yeah, I'm nearly home," as she held her turned-off phone to her ear and sped up. Still, you're not a bad man, far from it. You've only groped 3 women, and you've only catcalled 2, and you've only hit 1. And she was a little bitch, so she deserved it. Yet the only thing she did was speak up and challenge you. And you don't like it when us little girls don't bow down to you. All she did was walk home. And that's all she will ever do. Because you snatched that chance to be more from her. Don't tell your daughters and your sisters and your mothers to look out and change to be safer. Don't tell them anything at all. Your word means nothing. When even walking home poses a threat. And this one's not as angry. That's it. I'm next on. I can't even think straight enough to know what I'm thinking as I sit here, clutching my sticky notes, waiting to go on stage. What if they hate it and they laugh? Or worse, what if they say nothing at all? What if the only feedback I am presented with is the feedback echoing from the microphone that I am holding too close to my mouth? "You're up, kid," the older guy with a moustache that looks too big for his face says to me. I stand up and I walk to the stage and it's already too bright. It feels as though this is the light at the end of the tunnel and I am foolishly walking straight into it. Am I standing too straight? Am I slouching? Does anybody give a shit if it's either? I open my mouth to recite the first line, and just like that, I'm back. I'm back on my doorstep with a sea of cigarette butts at my feet. There they stay, devoted, hanging on to every word I speak. I'm mumbling, trying to get out all of the ideas I have in my head, trying to make them into something worthwhile. They already are, but I don't know this. I speak of pain, of anger, of sadness, of hope. I speak my mind and I don't miss a thing.
Suddenly, I don't care if they like it. I don't care at all. Suddenly, all I care about is me. You may say it's selfish, but I say about fucking time. I wonder if the greats ever felt like this. I wonder if Wild's legs shook and Dylan's lips sweat. I wonder if they ever felt like me. Or did they just speak their truths and deal with the consequences later? But I am not Oscar, and I am not Bob. My words are my own. They are mine to hear, and mine to bend, and mine to speak no matter what. And speak them I will. And with that, the crowd goes wild.
So that brings us to the end of the evening. When Caitlin introduced me, she said I was ridiculously proud of all the student performers, and nothing has happened tonight to make me any the less proud. I'm not going to cry. But thank you to all of them. Thank you to Caitlin. Thank you to Maria. And what a fantastic note to end on with Ruby's line about the crowd went wild. It was purely accidental because we did it in first name alphabetical order, and yet it was just serendipity. So, yeah, thank you, crowd, for going wild. You've been amazing. Thank you.